Welcome to the podcast for emerging and blue-collar leaders. This is The Growth Project. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to The Growth Project. Thanks for joining in. Today's going to be a really fun one because I have a guest with me today. I'm really excited about this one. It's been in the works for a little while, and it's an old mate, an old friend, and this one we're really going to have some fun with, so hope you enjoy it. The reason I'm so excited is that this is my old mate, Chad Murdoch. Chad is a business owner in the civil or utilities construction space, and but what I wanted to talk to Chad about today was his views on the challenges of running a business and being a leader. But Chad's very passionate about leadership, leadership in business, leadership in sports, mindset, and Chad and I have had lots and lots of amazing conversations over the years. So I thought it would be really beneficial for all of you to hear some of Chad's thoughts and as well on a lot of the themes we've been talking about. But at the same time, we're just going to let this run and have some fun with it. We've got no plans on how this episode's going to go. Who knows what's going to happen? But Chad, welcome aboard, mate.
I appreciate that kind introduction. We've had many chats over the years. We've been in the trenches, digging our businesses and getting things across the line. And we've had some many great chats on the phone that we're going, this would be a good podcast, even for us just to listen back to, the key points we talk about in life. And I think it transcends not only your business, but your life, your family life, your friendships. So let's just we'll roll and see where it goes. And, hopefully have a few laughs and a few good points along the way for everyone to listen to.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And how different is this too? Sunday mornings meant a different thing for us in years gone by, didn't they? But here we are, well rested with a cup of tea.
Yeah, a cup of tea and a coffee. I know. So it's almost midday, so we can almost crack open a beer, so that's all right.
Yeah, we'll get there. I really appreciate you setting some time aside for us, mate, and coming on having a chat. And we've been having chats about some of the stuff I've been putting up as we've gone as well. But do you want to just give people an introduction on, I guess your background, who you are, where you're from, what you've been doing and all that sort of stuff? Give people a bit of an introduction on Chad.
Yeah, no worries. I suppose ever since a young, late teens, I suppose, teenager growing up into adulthood, I've always been drawn to leadership, similar, I just recently listened to your episode with John Granat. Wombat, as we all know him by, but, another fellow, he is my brother-in-law, but fellow player and coach. And, we've loved that football industry, that we call gridiron here in Australia. So I grew up in that, loved it, just fell in love with the guys that were above me leading the club, guys that like Craig Wilson, these kind of guys that have got phenomenal leadership skills that you just want to emulate and were passionate to take about in other areas of your life, whether it was spending time with your mates, your family, eventually into our careers and then into the businesses that we've run. So that's, I've always been drawn to it. I've loved it. Brought up a lot of issues and, flaws in yourself and how you've handled situations and realize you're not, necessarily always right or things like that. So, really passionate about it. Try and do what I can, with the information I've got to make decisions along the way. We're going to make mistakes, and that's part of leadership. It's putting your hand up, made that wrong. I'm going to learn by it, admit your mistake and move on.
Yeah, and that's that growth mindset, isn't it? That's where mindset comes into it, because so many of us, and we've probably, and I think some people are susceptible to falling in and out of that mindset at times. Like, it can be really confronting to acknowledge when you're wrong, can't it? But I think coming back to sports briefly, you mentioned your sports leadership and that the way that is integrated into that part of your life. I love the sport lens because it's relatable to a lot of people.
Yep.
And what I think a lot of people don't realize is that those values and those skills and those mindsets, they're not just, it's not like it's different for business. Leadership is leadership. It's a mindset, And the way we approach situations, I don't think is any different. We're still dealing with people. We're dealing with people and psychology, and it doesn't change a whole lot, in my opinion, from those different spheres, business, or whether you're trying to inspire people in a crew, or whether you're trying to inspire a team for a match. I think the way that we lead people, I think, is pretty. Those skills and approaches, I think, are transferable.
Yeah. Look, especially in volunteer organisations, like local league sport is all volunteer. You pay to play. Some people get paid, but most of us don't, So you've got to set the example, and you're there for passion. Like, you got to understand that these people are giving up their time, their family time, their career time to play a sport that you can essentially get hurt or injured, or it just takes time. So being an example of that is having the banter there that's encouraging to get people back. It's not all serious, Be serious when it's time to be serious, but have fun. And that's what I love about football communities, all sporting communities, is it's that banter and that fun and, getting people back there and building long relationships. Like I said, I've got my brother-in-law out of that. I've got great mates out of that. Catch up even if it's every few years, you don't feel like you've missed any time, because you've got war stories. You've gone from struggles, you've had glory as well, and all these types of things. So then transferring that into your work and your business, having that banter on site, but also, hey man, what's going on? Noticed you had a bit of an off week. Is everything all right? And then just, again, you did that podcast brilliantly with John, just checking in with people. Just noticed you've been a bit off or a bit quiet, and then not their jovial self or whatever that is. You got to be open to looking at things like that, and even they'll say it to you because they follow the leader, yeah? So it's like, hey, man, you look tired today. What's going on? Or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and this is why I love looking at this through the sporting lens too, because I think in the sports setting, I think you're more likely, or the people in those environments are more likely to have a bit more insight into each other's personal lives, maybe. And there is very much a deep personal connection with your teammates, right? That I think that's really prominent in the sports space, and you do. I think you do seem to see more. You mentioned about checking in with people. Someone seemed off. That seemed abnormal. I think. Do you think that that's maybe down to the closer connection between the people, just on a connection level, not necessarily the actual sport, or but more just you're a bit more emotionally connected with the next guy?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And knowing what they're like on a normal day to being an off day, or, even if it's in your business, trying to get to know that employee or a co-worker, they might be a bit quiet or quieter. So they're a bit, you got to find common ground with people. Bringing up things like sport is a good example, or, what are you doing on the weekend? Things like that. Trying to learn a bit about that employee or co-worker that's behind the scenes. Understand, you've got a family, and okay, so how many kids, that kind of thing that we all do generally, but actually really taking note of that. Oh, how was John's birthday on the weekend? He turned 5. Yeah, man, really good. Okay, cool. Like being interested in what they had coming up and remembering that they went away camping. Oh, how was camping on the long weekend? Yeah, man, awesome. Weather was fantastic. Like creating those connections, and that's what keeps people in their job. Like most of my employees are all 2 to 5 years, just one of my workers, she's, going on 7 years, or just ticked over 7 years. So having those conversations, and also you being vulnerable with them as well, telling them a funny story, or the time you stuffed up on site, or you made a mistake on the weekend and it caused this drama, and, you laugh about it now, but being open and vulnerable, and they see you as not just the leader, but someone who they can come to and relate to and give you a perspective. You're going to be honest with them, and not a brutal way. Sometimes it might come across as brutal, but it's just putting it so it's not such a rough edge.
Yep. And I love you pointed out some vulnerability there as well, because I think that can catch people off guard. But I think it's important as a leader to show a bit of vulnerability, so that they can remember that we're still human. We're human just like you are. We're just another person. We're going through our own stuff as well. We're not perfect. And I think that's a powerful asset as a leader, to show some vulnerability and accountability. Like you're saying, I've been transparent when I've stuffed up. I think that goes a long way, but also challenges, I think, the traditional I guess, perception of a leader or a manager. And when I came up, my mindset was to be a leader. It's someone who's been in the job for 20 years. They've done all the hard work. They've graduated to leadership now.
That's right.
And you mentioned, I'm going to come back to, you mentioned Craig Wilson, and this was, for me, this really challenged my perception of leadership roles in the workplace when I came in, where we worked together all those years ago, and he was the top boss. And I'm thinking, but he looks way too young to be a boss. How can that be right? But he was such a strong leader, and that disrupted my train of thought about, well, hang on a minute, does that mean there are opportunities for me when I'm still young? Do I have to wait in the queue for 30 years before I can get that opportunity? And the answer is absolutely not. I'm determined to get Craig on this podcast one day. I'm just going to mention that. I'm absolutely determined. I have had an interaction with him, but I'm going to try and leverage off that. But because I think he'd be an excellent one, because leading, I mean, it seems to me like he's spent a lot of his career leading people who are older and in some cases potentially more experienced than him in those industries. That's going to bring some challenges for sure.
Oh yeah, very cutthroat leader as well. Like and again, all of our leadership styles, there's some great points and there's some negative points. You know, some people are too strong, and then some people are too soft. You know, so there's that balance. You know, and he'd be the first to admit that he doesn't always get it right. You know, we've had some personality clashes in our sporting careers. You know, and then as a worker, you know, and age difference, and then you appreciate, oh, he had to go through all of that. And I understand when you've got workers or a co-worker issues and playing in teams, and they're learning, like you said, they're learning as much along the way as well as leading a group of volunteer people to get to the same common goal, or a workforce that you've come from outside that industry, and now you've got to lead a whole organisation to a certain point and be successful and profitable. And, you know, it's not an easy task. And, you know, so when you start, it's like everything. When you get to that position of some sort of leadership, you start to appreciate what the other people have gone through, and listen to their stories and learn off them again, you know, with a different set of eyes, I suppose.
Yeah, and I completely agree, mate. I think when you look at applying this in the workplace, and let's say a large organisation, actually it doesn't really matter what organisation, what size organisation. I can remember and reflect on times where I can see a clear path forward, and I can see what the necessary clear path forward is. And there might be people around you who don't see that or don't share the same view, or they might be challenged by it, or they might not agree with it. But you can see that that's the way forward. And this is where I think when you're an effective leader, getting people on board, at least to respect that this is the way we need to go forward. I might not agree with it, but I need to get some investment out of people to get on board with me, because this is the way that I think we need to go forward. Ultimately, someone needs to make the call. In this case, it's going to be me. How do I get people invested in that? And that's where the things like showing some vulnerability, building those connections over time, showing some accountability yourself. And I speak a lot about building trust. I think when you form connections with people and you build trust, that's where you can ask for their investment in, even if they don't agree. And that's where, because if you don't have that investment, or if you don't have that trust and you don't have that respect as people, I think it's really difficult, I would argue even maybe impossible, to get that investment and that buy-in where they might not be on board.
Yeah, especially if it's a change in a process or whatever that may be. But it's also putting it that, hey, it's going to be difficult for you and I and all of us, but let's do it for 2 weeks. I need your feedback. How can we do it better? Where can we improve? And so that they've got value in, it's not just something that's I'm telling them to do it. Yes, that is true, but I'm also, how do we make this better? Hopefully getting some positive or creative feedback to go, hey, if we tweak this here, tweak that there, that's going to save us like 30% time. And plus, if they keep repeating that process, they're going to naturally get quicker anyway.
Yeah.
Or better at it, or produce a high quality output.
Yeah, and there's also the other side of this too, isn't there, where it's also you then being open-minded enough to take on that feedback, and not falling into the trap of just saying, give me your feedback to try and buy their investment. You've then got to be open to the feedback, and you've got to challenge your own thinking, don't you, to go, actually, they might have a point here, or maybe I need to show the respect of trialing their idea as well for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And then again, this contributes to that over time, building that connection and that trust with that people, that, or if I do speak up, I'm at least going to be listened to, because we don't want to squash people's tendencies to put things forward and to be open and with their thoughts. We've got to be open-minded enough to challenge our own thinking as well.
Yeah, and giving them a shot at, if there's a way that it's not going to work, let them do it anyway. As long as they're not going to hurt themselves, as long as there's not going to be an absolutely detrimental, catastrophic end to it, let them struggle. Like for us, for our civil guys, let them struggle in the hole, in the mud and the wet. It's fine. Yeah, do it that way. And then they'll really struggle. They'll probably get it. I go, remember that other way I said? Let's do that on the next time. And then they're trying to go, yeah, no, you're right. That was exactly. And that's the flip on the other side. Sometimes I'm in the hole, whatever it is, and I'm doing it. I was like, no, I'm doing it this way. And then sure enough, the suggestion that they made, I was like, yeah, that would have been better. So again, it's that vulnerability and having banter with it. And then just, having that respect that you do listen to them and you do take on their stuff. But at the same time, when it is dangerous, it is critical, it's like, no, man, we're doing it my way, because this is why, and we've tried it this way, and it doesn't work because of these reasons. And I know you don't see it because you don't have that experience, but that's why. So, and if they do have that trust with you, you've kind of won the argument before it's even an argument.
Yeah, and I lost my train of thought there for a second. You mentioned the vulnerability again, and it sounds to me like what you're saying is you're willing to be outwardly open and honest that, okay, your way was right. Otherwise, if you're saying, no, this is the way it needs to be, you're at least giving the respect and coming back and saying, well, it's because of this, and you're giving reasons why, and you're trying to give you're trying to let them see your reasoning, as opposed to just saying, no, this is how it is, deal with it.
That's what I openly tell them. I want them to be better. Yeah. Be better than me. I'm, on and off the tools, this and that. Be better, please.
Better for you, isn't it, in the long run?
That's right. Yeah. And I've supported guys that have gone and started their own businesses, and they've either subcontract back to me, or, I've helped them out in other fields and industries and things like that. If there's a better opportunity, I've never faulted anyone for wanting to move on and better their life. I'm proud of it. I'm like, yep, go and do it, man. Let's go.
I've been waiting. Actually, I love when this topic comes up, and it comes up for me often in training programs. But I think when it comes to coaching, let's move over, shift gears to coaching people, right? Mm-hmm. I remember coming up through certain industries where you would work with an old timer and an experienced person, and they'd be really reserved about and hesitant to share their knowledge and their hacks, I guess you'd call it, share their experience and really genuinely coach you, because there seems to be, for some people, this thing that, well, if I help you get better, you're then a threat to me. You could take I want to get the next supervisor opportunity, and you're going to take that from me if you get better than me. And I think in some industries that's a big problem that's holding a lot of people back. Yep. And for me, I look at this and I try and promote to people the complete opposite. If I want to take the next leadership opportunity, what better way to put your leadership skills on display than coaching and propping other people up?
Yeah, it's that feast or famine mentality. Some people have got the famine mentality, that scarcity. If I give them my knowledge, they're going to take this off me, or they're going to take my role or take my business. That's an insecurity issue, as a person. That's probably going to float through their whole life. Whereas I try and be the opposite of that. I've seen guys lead by example, the opposite of that, and I loved it. Getting advice, getting their, hey, this is better ways of doing it, or just watching them, and copying what they've done in life, And if everything's a feast, then it's like there's plenty for all of us, no matter if it's in your role or if it's in your business or whatever that is. Even like rival contractors, more than happy to help them. If they get better, guess what? I'm going to get better. You're going to lift the bar. The rising tide lifts all ships. Let's lift it together. And having that competitive rivalry is good. Some of it's going to be negative. That's fine. Let them talk. That's, you can't control what you can control, and your thought process, your mindset is about that. And if that's your genuine mindset all the time, then you're more than happy to give out nuggets of, gold all the time, because it'll come back eventually. If it doesn't, you're giving it to give, give to give rather than give to get.
Yeah. Let's shift gears a little bit. So let's talk about, because I've spent a lot of time talking to leaders about, here's some of the challenges that your teams are facing, and particularly when you're having difficult conversations. I've put a lot of time into that, right? But let's flip it a bit. Let's talk about the challenges of owning a business, right? And maybe it might be helpful for people who work in a business who are being led by others, who might have frustrations about things. Let's lift the hood a little bit on what kind of challenges is your leader facing, because it's a hard thing to do, to one, be a leader, and to two, then also own the business of the people that you're leading.
Yep.
There's some things that I think a lot of people don't consider when you're working for a business, and let's say a smaller business, and there's a lot of challenges that face you on a day-to-day basis from a leadership perspective, because I'm big that leadership and management are different things. Mm-hmm. We manage things, we don't, and we lead people. That's my big thing, right?
Yep.
And so when it comes to owning a business and leading people day to day, and then also you're in the trenches with them, right, doing the physical work. So there's a lot on your plate. So let's give some people some insights on some of those challenges of being the owner of the business as well as the leader of the team.
Well, there's probably no off switch.
Yeah.
A lot of guys in our position will know it's a 24/7 thing. Very rarely do you switch off, and, from when you go from an employee to a business owner or business operator even, it's probably more to the fact, but you're double or triple your work hours. If you're doing 40, you're going to do 80, 90 for 2 years straight. It's just the way it is, to generate that momentum. You're going to be the poorly paid worker, in that company, whether you're paying yourself a good wage, but you're working 100 hours, or you've got to still work those 100 hours, but that first 1 or 2 years, you might only pay yourself, half of what you're paying some of your guys. There's some perks along the way. You can, get your fuel and all that sort of stuff, but there's a lot of things that you're not getting paid for, and it takes a lot of sweat equity, and your employees are very valuable, because especially as a small business, if they're not coming in, you don't make money, or it's very hard to juggle, especially if you're a one-man operation, with one other guy, very critical. And that's where you've got to have a good relationship with he's your right-hand man. He's like, if he's not in, you're not making money. So you need to be empathetic for their situation, ask them if they got things coming up, if they need a day off, give it to them. Is it better that you plan the day off, or they just call in sick because you're too rigid? You only get holidays when you get holidays. That's it. Public holidays is your holidays,
Yeah.
So you've got to have that flexibility with your workers, and that's what I always wanted. I never wanted a full-time job. So I started a business and double my work hours. It's stupid, but I never wanted a full-time job because I didn't want to be owned. But having that flexibility, if you finish your jobs early, you can come home, things like that. Having those perks, having some bonuses that they work towards, having incentive to work, rather than just doing your hours. If I want extra money, I'll just work an extra 2 hours that aren't productive, or just milk the time. Whereas incentive-based, all right, if you get these done, we get this bonus at the end of the week or every day or whatever that is. So trying to think of things in your business to spark it up and be different than just working for a big company where you literally are just a number. If you don't come in, they probably don't really lose much money. It's sort of covered, they can sort of work around it. But when you're a small business, it's critical. These guys have to come in, and on the flip side, they need their time off as well. So having that balance, how do you do it? We have RDOs, but I like group them with a public holiday, so they get a 4-day break or just randomly get a 4-day stint, so they got a reward of that time. They can plan things, but, you know, you're getting that little bit of, you know, half an hour out of them extra a day, you know, and then also then you plan your servicing and scheduling and your off time and things like that, because just because they've got a day off, you know, say it's on the weekend, you've got your time off, they're working, you're still working. You're thinking about what could happen out in the field or what could happen. You know, you don't switch off. You know, Sundays are the best day. I know my phone's not going to ring. You know, work related. So yeah, trying to do that in and around your work life as well. And it's you know, 90% of businesses fail. You know, a lot of people don't realise that. You know, and then of those 10%, 90% of that 10% fails in the next 5 years. You know, and that's a 10-year time frame. So. And it's ups and downs. It's, you know, tax obligations. It's GST. It's super. It's all of the things that you don't think about and you just take for granted that gets paid every other day, but you're the one generating the income to pay it. You know, like I say, the boys, every pen that you see on this table is paid for. You know, it's like it has to come from somewhere.
Yeah,
it's not like a big company where it's just in the filing cabinet. It's everything is paid for. So, yeah, when they have that respect of it, I think. The arguments are almost won because everyone's bought in. They understand, okay, so everything, you know, the fuel, let's not waste fuel. It's expensive, but, you know, like you tip knocking over a jerry can on site, that costs money. You know, that's money out of all of our pockets because we look at the end of the financial year and how much profit we are, how much can we give pay rises, can we give extra bonuses? You know, essentially it's money out of your workers' pockets if they're wasting it. So making sure that they know that's critical, that you're willing to invest the money in your business, but you're not willing to waste it or accept that they're wasting it.
Yeah, pardon me. I love that point because I talk about this in some of our training programs when we're face-to-face with people about, you know, we find ourselves every now and again out on site doing some assessments on people, for example, or whatever it might be. And the amount of times I see, you know, employees doing things like chucking tools around. And for me, it kind of hurts a little bit when I see that tool hit the ground because I go, oh, that's $20, you know, and I just saw $40 over there 3 seconds ago. And some people don't think of it because a lot of people look at a business owner and go, oh, well, they own the business. They're obviously set. You know, money's not an issue. Time's not an issue. And it's just not the case. Every dollar counts. Every dollar is allocated, whether it's to profit or whether it's to expenses. Every dollar is accounted for. And when you have things like, you know, people turn up 5 minutes late or people knocking things over, the jerry can over and wasting $5 worth of fuel, it seems menial at the time, but you add all these things together over a year and we start looking at, can we make pay rises this year? Can we do X, Y, Z? Do I have time to take a week off? Do we have funds for me to take a week off this year, you know, and it's good for people to hear that it's not all roses when you're a business owner. It's very expensive financially. It's very costly in time, which means it's very costly in mental effort. And when you see business owners maybe taking some of those perks, like I'm going to take some time off or whatever it might be.
Upgrade a vehicle,
and people think, oh, he's this guy going flexing again, you know, but it's just not the case. It's just not the case. It's I mean, when you own the business and you're the one putting everything you have on the line to keep the business running, you're accepting all the financial risk. Yeah, you absolutely deserve the perks, right? You deserve the perks is my point number one. But my other point too is sometimes when the perks is things like taking some time off or taking some flexibility, some people might see that as taking a luxury, whereas others I would say in a lot of cases, this is me managing my mental currency here. This is me managing my mental health balance right now. This isn't me taking a perk. This is me managing and staying sane.
Yep. And structuring that into your work life is very hard because I know when I have time off, I think I did about 40 odd days straight and had the long weekend, King's birthday off. Guilty. Saturday felt guilty. I'm like, why do I feel guilty? It's, you know, it's our time. You know, you're there with your wife in the Grampians, you're looking at nature and all you're thinking is, I should be working. You know, so you're in that little motor that's going and it's going and it's going. You know, and then by the Sunday you start to relax and by Monday you're like, yeah, we should do more weekends like this, you know, like you start to enjoy that. So it's very hard. It's very hard not to feel guilty when you're not working. It's very, and you know, your family do cop a bit, you know, they miss you because you're not there, you know. You've just done 16 hours, you have 4 hours sleep, and you've done that for 6 days in a row, and then you're just a zombie. Like there is a huge price to pay. You beg, borrow, and steal because you didn't get paid, or you had truck breakdowns, or whatever the issues are in your business that don't cause you to generate that revenue. Then you're beg, borrowing, and stealing. You're taking cash off your credit card to pay your workers. They don't see all that. They're the levels that you will go to as a business, especially when you're growing, when you're going through a bad stage, or you've got circumstances that are causing these things in your business. And, we can do future episodes on things like that we've all battled through with business. But, like you do things that you would never want to do, just to pay these guys that you respect and they've done the work and they need to be paid, because they've got families. And you think about that, that's pretty serious. Like, again, time to have banter and time to have that. My serious thoughts at night is like, man, I've got 6 livelihoods on the line here. Like, I can't not get out of bed today.
Yeah.
I've had 3 hours sleep. We've got to go. It's Monday morning. I know, I get it. It's Sunday morning. We've got to get up. Like, let's go. Like, we've got to prep the week. If I do this A, B, and C today, that means Monday we're off on a charge, and we've got to have a good week, because the previous 2 weeks have been average because of weather or breakdowns or whatever that situation, had guys off sick. Whatever that situation is, you as the leader, you need to lead from the front. There's no excuse policy. And if that's how you get up in the morning, there's no excuse. Like there's reasons, but, I did a program 75 hard, probably 2021, just about to start doing it again. It's like listening to the bitch voice or listening to your boss voice. And that program is about mental toughness, doing your training and all the mental things you got to do for 75 days straight. And so that sorted out a lot of things, as in, like, do I do it, or do I let the emotion of it beat me on this decision? And it's okay to, like, I can't be bothered. It's okay to feel that, but let's feel it for 5 minutes and get on with it. Don't let it bite you for 5 hours and then the day's gone, and then you weren't where you were meant to be because you were thinking about what you weren't doing when you could have got up a little bit earlier, knocked that out in 2 hours, and then you can have the rest of the day, with your family. So there are things that are in your control. You're always in control of your decisions.
Yeah. So, and that's tough, isn't it? 75 days straight. But you're right. When you have those things like, I've got salaries or wages I have to pay, and I feel like staying in bed? I feel like not going in today, or I feel like taking a slower morning today. Sometimes you're in a position where you just don't have the option. Otherwise, someone's not eating.
That's right.
Yeah. And what you're saying too is that as business owners and leaders, we eat last. Yeah, workers are first, because if you're not paying your workers, what incentive have they got to come in?
That's right.
So your workers are first before even your other legal liabilities, your tax bills, and all those things. And so you've got to put yourself last, and that's probably the big theme that I wanted to get out there for people to really let sink in. Is that if you're working for a small business, just have an awareness of what your employer is doing and sacrificing to keep people employed. And this isn't a guilt trip, but I think there's value in people seeing what someone goes through to keep someone employed. It's a big sacrifice at times. And yes, there are perks. If you're running a profitable business, there are perks. But most of the time, you've got to wait for those perks for quite a while. You don't just have the perks on tap, and you're being put first all the time.
It's a 2 to 5 year thing. It's like your health. It's a 24-month thing to get your health back on track, whether it's to lose weight or build muscle, whatever it is that you're aiming for. It's a little bit every day. That's what counts. You can't do it in 8 hours. You can't do 3 days of 8 hours for your fitness and then expect to be fit. It's just a little bit every day. And the same approach goes to a lot of things in life, business especially. It's just chipping away, doing those big hours essentially, but then it's just, I don't think there's not a day that I don't do something for it, whether it's an email or just a phone call or a text message. And on the flip side of that, a lot of relationships do suffer in your life, whether it's your mates or your partner and your kids. So you've also got to be aware of that, and when you do catch up with your mates, you catch up with them like they're your best, like you treat them like they're your best mates that you're not going to see ever again almost. And everything's happy. And, because some people will have a different view on your relationship once it's sort of frayed away. But if you initially go in with a handshake and a hug and, great to see you. You're back on. Like you build that time. So they make it feel like that no time has passed.
Yeah.
And same should be. And that's leading in life. Yeah, like I think we were talking about is like when you're at work and you're tired and that, listening to a podcast, coming on the way home, resetting, and then trying to lead back into the home. Being there for your wife or your husband or your kids. And not every day is going to be like that. And like I was saying to you before, like the way I'm talking to myself now is my internal dialogue. Do I get it right all the time? Absolutely not. Am I trying to do this 80% of the time and then I'm going to have a successful day? Most likely. But it's still, I'm always green and growing. I've got 20% to go. I'm always trying to get better, understand, empathize, all those kind of things that make you a better human being all over. And I think that's where leadership is. You lead from everywhere in life. We're all leaders. Someone is always looking at us. Whether you think you're a leader or not, you are. And I often joke with the boys at work. It starts with looking after the toilet. If you can't change the toilet roll, if you can't wipe the piss off the toilet, or wipe it off the floor, clean the toilet bowl, you're going to struggle in life. A lot of people say it's like getting it started with you making your bed, but it's the toilet. If you can't,
I'm hearing a bugbear here, maybe.
Well, if you can't respect your fellow human being, but that's leadership, right? That's just changing the toilet roll. But your kids are going to follow that, So it's like it's a fun way of looking at it and making those lessons fun. But it's like that's where it starts. It's personal accountability.
Yeah.
Do you walk past that bit of rubbish in the factory or do you just pick it up? Do you take your co-worker's coffee cup from the desk? Because they're busy and you just take it and wash it. Why not?
Yeah. So I'm hearing that you can't put these things in place or these disciplines in place in one part of your life and not the other. I couldn't agree with that anymore. And for me, I guess an insight I can give in how that applies to me is parenting and running my business. So, and leading people. So for me, what I've really learned over the last couple of years in particular is the close correlation between being a parent and being a leader. Because for me, when your kids start getting older, I start thinking, well, have I been doing a good enough job? Am I a good enough parent? Have I set them up for success in their life? Have I done enough for them? And you start being very self-critical about, it might be about individual things that have happened, or it might be just a big sense of dread in general. Am I good enough as a parent? And I started seeing that I was having the same self-reflection in business as well. Am I a good enough leader? Am I doing all the right things? Am I making the right decisions? Am I treating people properly, the way they need to be treated? And you start to call yourself into question. And I think I suffered in the last couple of years a big bout of imposter syndrome, both as a business owner and as a parent.
Okay.
And for me, the first thing I focused on was my parenting. And because to me, I saw that as the biggest risk in my life was failing for my kids, right? That was the biggest thing that I saw a threat in my life for me and for my kids. So I put a lot of focus onto that. And I knew that there were things that I needed to do much, much better as a parent. And so I wasn't focusing on leadership growth at all at that point. I was focusing on being a better dad. And for me, I started noticing as I was going down that path, I started noticing that, oh, hang on a minute. It seems to be if I'm handling these kind of tough situations with my kids in this way, and I was going down rabbit holes and researching things about leadership and conflict management and all those kinds of things. And I started going, well, hang on a minute. People are kind of suggesting the same things here. I'm getting how to handle tricky conversations with my kids over here, and they were remarkably similar to the ones I was hearing over here. So I started applying the same methodologies across both parts of my life. And for me, that's where I noticed big changes in what I was seeing happening around me when I started making those self-improvements. And most of it was linked down to two things: my emotional intelligence and my ego. And when I start dismantling that and going, well, I need to have better awareness and control of my emotions in certain situations, because I'm damaging relationships bit by bit around me when I'm not coping with a situation and I'm not handling it as well as I want to, and I'm damaging relationships. And I started to really see the risks that would present to me in business and as a parent, and for me, the big thing was a lack of connection between me and my colleagues and my team, and lack of connection between me and my kids, and for me, that was the most terrifying part. And so I started seeing that where I'm lacking in one part of my life, and I'm likely lacking in the other part of my life, and vice versa. So where I see chinks in the armor or gaps in an area of performance in one part of my life, I'm now applying this mindset that it's likely having a negative impact on the other part of my life as well. What are your thoughts on that?
And probably from the outside looking in, would have never thought you went through all that. Like I see you have a great relationship with Shell and your kids, and so it's interesting that even from the outside perspective, you think people have got it sorted, and maybe they don't as much as you do, even though their kids are great and they seem like they have a fantastic. And we all have issues in all our personal relationships, and the way we show up at work is definitely different to the way we show up at home. Sometimes, most of the time, they know all our warts and all, so we can say things that we'd never say to our workers or mates. And you've got to recognize that it doesn't become a long-term habit. I've gone through this. That's why I'm like this. Yeah, okay, recognize it. Now we've got to get better. I think what you said there with EQ, couldn't stress enough. EQ is like way more important than IQ. Having emotional intelligence, how to underreact, how to handle a situation. I've been in situations, with toxic relationships that has taught me how to handle my emotions. I'm an unemotional personality, that phlegmatic personality, but I can fire up and I can do all that. Like we've all got breaking points. But having that EQ to make decisions, not to be rash, not to jump down people's throats, I think that's critical. And you as a leader have to keep your composure. You have to. You're the guy that people are looking at. And if you can handle your EQ, then you're the guy that you want in an emergency situation. You want to be able to handle that. You want to be able to handle the traffic, handle the injury or whatever that may be. You want to be the go-to guy. I remember watching this thing about Jordan Peterson. He talks about being a monster. You want to be the stoic monster, that, you might have lost your dad. He talks about, and you're giving the eulogy, but everyone's turned to you at the funeral and they're relying on you. And then down the track, you have your time. Learning how to suppress that, not in a negative way, to be there for everyone else, and then you handle your stuff down the track. Some people won't be able to do that, and that's fine. We're all different, but that's kind of, I took that story and just went, yep, okay, that's naturally who I am, but I'm really going to work on that.
So you kind of, in that example you gave of giving it time later, so you're sort of allocating time for it in the future. We're not saying we're going to suppress it and not deal with it. You're saying we're going to deal with it, but we need to be something else right now. Yep. And I'm going to allocate time for it later for me.
I'll give you an example. Before I was probably started the business with a business partner, I was thinking about becoming a firefighter. And, the CFA had, some full-time roles that they were going to pay to play, so to speak. But a lot of it was, you could be stationed anywhere in Victoria. It was literally, it's up to them. And, I had a couple of mates, one in MFB, one in CFA, and just through talking to them and researching, it was like, especially with the CFA, it was like, if you get to the interview, they want to know if you've gone around, and investigate, not just gone down to Baronia where you might live. Have you gone to Horsham? Have you gone down to, Wangaratta or wherever it is? Have you investigated the role? Because you might be stationed there. So one afternoon I was heading up to, I think it was Horsham, maybe halfway there, get a call. Funnily enough, off Drongarat, my cousin's been killed in a motorbike accident day before his 27th birthday, or 28th birthday. We were meant to see him that night for his birthday.
Yeah.
Close cousin, life of the party, a guy that would hug everyone, even if you're a stranger, a really good guy. Great guy. What do you do? So I'm on this thing or this quest. I've got a journey. I'm like on the process. I'm an hour and a half or whatever it was from home. But I've got to go up here and talk to these fireys about the role, and this is part of being stoic. This is part of, handling your emotions. Get off the phone, punch the steering wheel, punch the door, get through this. You can't help anyone. It's done. Doesn't feel real, but let's do this interview. Get back to Marnie.
Yeah.
Go up there, do 2 hours with these guys, put it aside, asking all these questions about life and all the stuff you want to know about being a firefighter. Now it's go time. Head back, straight to Marnie's in Carlton. Now we deal with it. And, you're in shock. So a lot of us are able to handle that in shock. Some people can't, but it doesn't feel real. It's almost like you've watched a movie,
Yeah.
So it's tough, man. It's tough. And, but again, these are just little stories that you rely on yourself. It's like, okay, that was a bad moment and horrific for some, and then I got back and then I was able to mourn and do all that sort of stuff with my cousins and aunties and uncles and all of that. But it's, it's not easy, but it's a decision, that I wanted to get good at. A lot of people say, decisions aren't black and white. There's nuance, there's the grey. And I've always said that the grey is like the emotion, because either way down the track, whatever that decision is, if you're going left or right or picking that or picking this, you're going to have to make it. It's either going to be black or white, and the grey is just getting through the data and the emotion to make that decision. Mm-hmm. So what's that? Is it going to take you 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 5 hours? Depends on the decision, but don't let it bog you down for 5 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like handling that emotion in the moment. And some of those decisions are going to be very easy. It's like, we'll do this. But some of them are going to take some thought and process, and, don't let it get you down for too long, or don't sit there in the grey for too long. Process it, really process it, and get to the decision.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a powerful example too of having a need to remain stoic in a big high gravity situation, right? Because I can imagine that it would have felt like the floor was falling out beneath you in that time. In that interview, would have been such a strange experience as well. I can definitely relate to that, and I think for me, I've had something like that, but it wasn't a conscious thing at the time. Well, actually, no, probably not fair. It probably was. But, when I found out that my grandfather died, I was in the middle of a meeting with a big client, and my phone rang a few times in succession from my brother at the same, rapidly after the other. So I thought, oh, shit, something's going on here. And step outside the room and, hey, is everything okay? I'm just in a meeting. It sounds like it might be urgent. And the initial response was, no, look, it's just call me when you're done with your meeting. And it's like, well, no, you need to tell me now. I can handle it. You need to tell me now, so I'm not fretting.
Yeah, right.
And then I'll call you back after I'm done here. But I can't keep talking right now. And that was when I was told that my grandfather passed away, and I remember stepping back into that meeting thinking, like you described, it didn't feel real. It felt like I was in a separate space to everyone else, even though I was in the room at that time. And I think for me, I made the conscious decision that I needed to step back into that space. It was an important thing that I was doing. There's nothing I can do about the situation for anyone right now. I need to sit this out, and then I'm mentally going to come back to that, and I'm going to spend the rest of the day focusing on that now, because it's a big, important thing to face. But I can see the value in that. And do you think that applies in smaller impact things in your life as well?
Yeah, 100%. I think watching yourself in third person, I think we watched ourselves in those situations in third person.
Yeah.
It was kind of like I'm here, but I'm not. There's like a little bit of me that's just hanging around. And you can take that with, when you're talking to someone. I don't know if you've noticed it, but people can try it. You say you're standing there with your arms crossed. You'll find if you're in a conversation, you'll notice that the other person's got their arms crossed, and just for fun, just uncross your arms.
Yeah, right.
And if you're in agreement, they kind of mimic the body language stuff.
So I'm going to try that out.
Yeah, if people have watched body language, watch things on body language or read books on body language, people mimic you. If I'm a big stand there with a hand on the hip and cross my legs, and you'll find that, or lean on a cart, people do the same. And the reverse goes to that. If you're in a bad conversation, or not bad, but like a difficult conversation, he's got his arms crossed, you're open because you're trying to handle the situation. You cross your arms, match their body language, match their tone. If it's a little bit aggressive, get aggressive. There's time. You can't just sit back and always cop it from people. You've got to push back a little bit, but do it in a skilled way, and then try and bleed with them, cry a bit with them, so to speak, understand that where they're coming from is a place of frustration or anger or whatever that may be. And then open yourself back up, open your stance back up, back off a little bit, things like that. Watching yourself in third person, very hard to do. Don't do it all the time, but especially if I'm in a conversation that's good, difficult or not, just watching those conversations open back up, or, just for fun, just crossing your arms and watching the other person cross their arms, just things like that. It's actually a fun thing to do. And it's people might think it's manipulative, but it's not. It's just we people we like and we're in the conversation, we just naturally mimic their body language. You touch your face, you scratch your beard, they'll scratch theirs if they've got one,
Yeah.
So, just don't do it with your auntie.
So, yeah, interesting. So, you find when you're in those difficult conversations, do you find also that I find for myself, I've got an awareness of, and I'm still developing my skills in handling tricky conversations, but I find myself at times catching myself. So I go, oh, hang on a minute, it's happening. You're escalating. I can feel myself kind of trying to jump in, trying to stop someone, or not stop someone talking, but trying to interject. And I'm feeling all those physical responses that tell me that, oh, hang on, you're falling into an escalation here. Yep. I find myself catching myself and then self-correcting. And sometimes, I think you touched on this earlier, sometimes you've got to catch your emotions. So this is where the EQ comes into it, to go, it's going to feel like I'm eating shit here, and it's going to feel like I'm compromising too much, and I'm letting this person dictate the terms or whatever it might be. It's going to feel like that. But having the EQ part of it for me is your self-talk and saying to yourself, no, I'm not eating the shit sandwich here. I'm actually just being a little bit strategic about this because I want this conversation to go well. And I know that it's going to feel like I'm giving into this person, but you've got to have that self-talk to say, no, I'm not. You're not. Just invest into this conversation. It's going to feel like you're sacrificing and giving in, but you're not. And just having that emotional investment to control yourself in that way. And you're really kind of having to separate your emotional brain aside and coach it through that conversation, and constantly talk to yourself, okay, you're feeling angry, but it's okay. Just take a breath before you respond, and things like that. That's what I find for me helps me get through those conversations.
Yeah. And for people, it's just like your EQ is your emotional quotient. How do you respond? How do you let you suppress your emotions so that it's not a negative? I remember listening to a CD years ago. I've listened to a lot of business CDs and podcasts, and it's really helped shape a lot of my life and a lot of stories to lean on. I remember a story about do you want to be right or do you want to be rich? So in life, it's like, do you really want to win this? Like, do you need to be right on this, or do you want to be rich, as in the relationship, or it could be money, or it could be whatever it is? Do you really need to be right on this, even though you may be right, or just in a casual conversation, someone throws out a stat, and you think that's not right, but just let them talk. Does it really matter?
Yeah,
I think it's a good example. I think how to win friends and influence people. It's in there. They're at a dinner party. And it was rattling off as, the statistics and all this sort of stuff. And the other guy was an expert on it, but he was just quiet about it, because it was like, do I want to be right or do I want to be rich? And he valued the relationships and the dinner party and all of that. And it really was a nothing statistic. So it's not going to make or break life. And I think that's, some people always want to be right, but I think they've got very little wealth in a lot of relationships with that attitude. So it's not to say that you don't correct people, but it's just picking the right time,
Yeah, and even things to let go too, right?
Yeah, that's right. And it's also, do you really want to win this battle or do you want to win the war? So I'm very big on the long game. I want to win the war.
Yeah.
And some battles you got to sacrifice. Let them win that one. What can you do? Does it really matter in the scheme of things? Yeah, it hurts. It sucks. It's like, your ego is just like, man.
I was just going to say, that sounds like more of a battle of the egos.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. But if you can override that and go, you know what, I'm going to let this person have this, but because the war, the greater good, the scheme of what I'm trying to get to and the end game is way more important, way more critical. Yeah, win this war, man. Or you win this battle, man. I'm winning the war. And that's my attitude. So, yeah, just be nice, smile, kill them with kindness, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just, cool, you can have this one, but I'm promising you I'm winning the war. And that's the way I speak to myself, It's just having that, and it's being unoffendable. Like, I'm literally unoffendable. Someone could curse my wife out. They could do anything they want to me. Yell, scream, don't care. You've got no control over me in an emotional sense. Physical, different story. We're all got our buttons there. But for emotional, don't care what you say. It's just you're not going to get that antagonistic rise out of me just over an insult or a way you've looked at whatever. So, it's, again, very hard to do, especially some people very reactive. It's usually from an insecure place. And I figure I probably talk to myself harsher than most people are ever going to talk to me. So you're probably not going to get a rise out of me because I'm,
I've never seen you get riled up, actually, when I think about it. No. Never, ever, ever.
No. Yeah. What's the point? Again, do I really want to win this battle? Or are you out with your mates? It's like, come on, walk away from that. How many times do you see on the news your mates, like friends of friends or even someone you don't know, king hit, death. First thing I said to my brother when he was 18, I said, you better make sure, I'm 10 years older than him, so you better make sure that the fight you're in is the one you're worth dying for, because it's most of them, or 99.9% won't be. Just walk away, because it's only your ego that wants, and we've all been guilty of getting into scuffles and all that sort of stuff, but it's never worth.
It's a metaphor for every difficult situation you're in, isn't it?
Especially as a man.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked before about, what it sounded like you were really talking about is choosing your battles, and you might, the person might be right or they might be wrong, but is the impulse to interject and put them straight, is that the right outcome for what you're trying to achieve? And I talk a lot to people about before you go into any conflict situation, make sure you understand a couple of key things. Firstly, is what do you need things to look like after the conversation's finished? I need to be in a position where I can secure a deal off this guy, or a job, or whatever it might be. I need to still have a productive relationship with this person, because I know I'm going to need a favor off them, or I know that we're going to need to work together, or they're a strategic relationship. What do I need this conversation to look like at the end when we're done? Because everything I do then is informed by that. So from there, I say to myself, well, if that's what I need to get to by the time we're finished talking, what can I not say in this conversation? Well, I know that I can't correct this person. I know I can't put them in their place by saying this, or this. And these, I'm setting boundaries to myself. These are no-go zones. And no matter how I feel, and I'm consciously telling myself, no matter how I feel about the situation, no matter how angry I get, I'm not going there, or there. Mm-hmm. And that's a rule. You can't break that rule. And I think by setting those boundaries, that sounds to me like what you're talking about in terms of choosing your battles. Is it really critical that I correct this person here? Does it really matter in the scheme of things? Or even does it actually contradict what my goal is with this conversation?
Yeah. And having that as a prefabricated mindset, like you literally don't even have to think about it anymore. If you're always doing hard shit, you're doing hard shit. We'll take on jobs that no one else wants to do, may even lose money on them. Not a huge amount, but maybe not make money on them. But then you get the respect of the clients that you're doing work for, that you're a go-to company or a guy or a worker. You go over and above. You do, go the extra mile. We've all heard that before. So you become that. You set your own reputation by what you do. It's not what you say. Anyone can talk 1,000, different ways of doing things and talk themselves up. It's what you do. Put your money where your mouth is what you do. You don't even have to say a word. Just do it. Get it done. Do it well, and your reputation. And then people look after you as well. They come back at you. Hey, this work. What do you feel on that? How would you go about it? How would you quote that job? What do you feel about this company taking on? You just get serious questions from big guys and big companies that you're like, that's all right. They value my opinion.
Yeah.
Because you've done the hard yards, or they look after you at the other end. Hey man, I've got a couple of good jobs coming up. Do you want to put a quote in for it? Or, we'll just allocate these jobs to you. They're in your area or whatever they are. and they're easy jobs, and that's where you sort of, again, it's about the long game,
Yeah.
long-term relationships.
Yeah. Investing in those relationships over time is paying dividends, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. I'm going to shift gears again because, and I think there's some time we can spend on this as well. So I know we're probably not ready to release specific details yet, but you've got something else in the mix as well that you're working towards.
Yeah, man.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, a great mate of mine. We're eventually starting a podcast in the next little while, probably 2 months, I reckon. So just putting a few final things together to get that underway. But yeah, and we're just, I guess, another guy that you lean on, especially guys I find that are directors or own companies and things like that. You kind of have a few war stories. You ring them up and, I might have rung you or you might have rung me. And, by the end of the conversation, we go, oh, we got it good. Like you tell me your war story. I go, geez, as bad as what I'm going through is good. And then you'll tell me the same thing, So, and it's always an hour plus conversation. Like this could be a podcast, or this could have been, a few gems for a few people that not only who we know could hear, but people that we don't know, And I'm a big believer on I've constantly smashed podcasts. I'll be a 10 to 12 hour probably person a week. So we just want to, put our thoughts and, just have a common goal, a bit of a passion project, and who knows where it may lead. Yeah,
awesome. It's really exciting because for me, you've given me a bit of I've got an awareness of what it is, the vibe you're going for with your podcast. And what you just described there was, when you have these conversations, it might start off about a specific situation or whatnot, but then we really start to break down the ethics of it and the values of it, and the values behind it. And we start to have this conversation that's a little bit deeper, and we're scratching the surface on a lot of things. And we're talking about social issues from a empathetic and critical thinking perspective. And they're fantastic conversations, and you want to have them outwardly. That's what I'm hearing on the podcast.
Yeah, things that aren't so, technically PC or, that match the current climate or the culture, have a laugh, but also able to cry. I want to listen and watch things that actually bring a tear to your eye and play on some heartstrings. I guess a lot of things about attitude that I find and what I do personally is like I'll listen to a lot of podcasts like Naomi Park on the Rogan podcast, Attitudes Plus. Like that lady is phenomenal, what she had to endure, and she's got this fantastic attitude on life, and just such a small, petite frame, but she's like a monster of life. She just has this attitude of don't stress, don't worry about it, go after it, better your life. She read like 100 books in a year when she escaped North Korea. Things like, watching things like Ross Kemp, Extreme World, seeing how other people live in other cultures and countries, Louis Theroux, all these guys are kind of, the people are like, oh, they're dark, but I like the dark stories of humanity because it makes me appreciate what I've got. Going to a third world country and seeing how genuinely happy these people are. And then we come back here and then we're crying about the traffic or something that it's like we're living in the luckiest country in the world, So really just appreciating what you've got every day. My wife, she's big on writing it all down, does a journal, all that sort of stuff. I'm not a journaler or a writer, but my attitude is I'm blessed. All the problems I got, I'm blessed. Tragically, I had one of my cousins pass away last year from a stroke, and her husband worked just to change gear again, but he works for me. And, one weekend, it was a long week, the Queen's birthday last year, and, just went from, a guy going to work to suddenly in a weekend being a widower, with 2 young boys.
Yeah.
And I often think, as tough as I've got it, things I'm going through, work, business, all the stuff that, we can dig deep into future casts once it's all done and dusted. But my life's blessed, man. Like what he's had to do is just awe-inspiring. Her sister, what she's, like all of it, you see what the family goes through. People rally together and, you go to a funeral, good chance to reflect on life, reset, rekindle some old cousin relationships and uncle and aunties and repair things because life's short, man. Like we're literally on this earth for a speck of, time compared to what, life is going to keep rolling. It's going to move on. So just don't sweat, like read books like Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, The Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Like these books will teach you just to not to sweat the small stuff. Get angry about stuff. 2 minutes, 5 minutes, an hour. That's it. Move on. Go and punch the bag. Go and hit the gym. Go do what you got to do. Get over it. Move on.
So you want to focus on some of these really powerful stories.
Just attitude. We're so tribal. We're so tribal as humans. Like come from a different street or a different primary school or a different high school to different football teams to states to that's where a lot of all of our problems are rooted in tribalism.
Yeah.
As human beings. And I've never met anyone that didn't bleed red,
Yeah.
I'm in a blessed situation that I come from a very multicultural background, got, black nana, mothers from Malaysia, like all, the very multicultural background. And so to me, it's just normal, and we've all got our prejudice and we've all got our preconceived ideas, but we're all just human beings, and I guess having those stories and learning off others and having guests that have had bigger and better lives or more tragic lives, you can take the lessons out of them, and Soft White Underbelly is another one. If you haven't watched that, watch that. Just people off Skid Row and, they might be junkies or they might be, sex workers or whatever their story is, but look at the humanity side of it. What led them there?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm excited to see this unfold, and I know I've already invited myself onto your podcast, but because there are times in our lives that are so powerful, and the gravity of the situations we find ourselves in sometimes really in those moments makes you realize that those problems I was dealing with at work last week were nothing. What I thought was the really big, difficult decision or a difficult situation to handle was fuck all.
Yeah.
It just wasn't even a thing. But and then you realize that again, but then we fall back into normal patterns of life, and then the small things become big things again. So I love that your podcast I'm definitely going to be listening to everything you do, because I think the more you put yourself in a situation to remind yourself that these things that I'm treating as the big things still are the small things, because I don't want to wait for the next big thing to come along to remind me, because I've found myself in situations in my life where I've been in such powerful situations where I've gone, I'm never going to stress about anything again. But then, of course, 2 weeks later you do. I'm really excited to see that you're going to be exploring all these things, because those stories are inspiring, and they give you ideas, and they give you moments of self-reflection where, sitting in the car on the way home, listening to a podcast, if I'm hearing stories from people like this, it's a good reminder, isn't it? With avoiding not waiting for the big thing to actually happen, but just a self-reminder that this podcast is going to give me a reminder that what I dealt with today wasn't a big thing.
That's right. The amount of times I've driven around the block, or to listen to the end of a story, or I'm wiping tears away from my eyes, because it relates or it's hit me hard, and it just humbles you. What they've gone through or what they're talking about. Because all our problems are a 10. Like your problems and my problems, they're all 10s to us.
Yeah.
But it's again having that self-reflection, that putting your problems in perspective. It's not meant to mean you don't feel it or you don't handle it or you don't honor that it's a 10 problem, or is it really a 10 problem, or is this a 3? Am I making it a 10 because I'm in a bad mood, I haven't slept, and the kids have been crying all night, and it's a 3. Okay, this is a 3 problem.
Yeah.
Getting that perspective quicker rather than, and sometimes it takes a podcast or how many times have we been, I don't feel like going to that family function or catching up with mates.
Yeah.
But almost within a minute or two of being there, you're like, I'm so fucking grateful I came.
Yeah, 100%. All the time.
And you know what? And the flip side of that, and a few times, I've never seen that person again because they weren't around, tragically. You know, and I'm like, thank fuck. I went to that family function I didn't want to go to, I didn't have time to do, I had to hybrid it and leave one early to go to the other.
Yeah.
And I got to see them.
Yeah.
And had a great interaction with them, and had a laugh, had a smile, had a bit, whatever it is, So I don't want to leave anything off the table, I want to, or on the table. I just want to experience life and have fun, but also, there's times to be serious and self-reflect and listen to those types of stories to appreciate what I've got or what I've missed out on or inspired me to do something, bigger and better with my life and always be green and growing. Never want to be ripe and rotting. I want to be green and growing for the rest of my life. That's my goal. So doing things like this, stepping out of your comfort zone. Everyone's got something great to say. If you have that attitude about everyone, you can learn off everyone. Doesn't matter what they've done or what they haven't done.
Yeah,
everyone's got a story.
Yeah, 100%, mate. And I cannot wait to see that come out. So when you do get it to a point where you're ready to launch, you got to make sure you keep us in the loop because
100%.
What we might do is get you and is it Mark?
Yeah, Mark. Yeah,
get you and Mark in.
Yeah,
and let's do a three-way podcast recording, we can sort of give everyone a good heads up.
And a great leader, leader, coach many football teams, successsul business owner, just a real little, I call him a savage gentleman. Like he's a gentleman. He's really loyal and stoic and just has a really passionate guy. But just got a bit of a savage heart, down below. Really happy to get his hands dirty and grit, and we bounce well off each other. Really phenomenal guy to be associated with, and known him, easily 20 years. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, good. Likewise, mate. And so people stay tuned for that. I'm definitely you're going to be the first to hear about it here on the podcast. So when Chad and Mark are ready to put some details out, it will be announced here very shortly afterwards. So we'll make sure that everyone's aware of that. And, from the time that I've known Chad, we've been, and I guess we never actually gave people a background as to how we connected a long time ago. So many years ago, when we both entered the same industry, we both started work as trainees together at the same place.
We're about 21, 22, something like that.
Yeah, about that.
Yep.
Yeah. Fair while now. So we've been connected for, more than 20 years now. And we went through a traineeship together. And, I think in retrospect, it didn't take us long to realize that we shared a lot of the same values and we always just got along. But
shooting spitballs in class and all that sort of stuff.
I still remember that looking over at you were the one that was being shrouded in spitballs. I guess there was like a silhouette of you.
Yeah,
this is the immature lives of trainees in a trade school. Was poor Chad was the victim sitting against the wall of spitballs.
I'm happy to give it back, but we learn a lot. We passed the course. That's the main thing. Sorry, Craig.
But more importantly, we formed a close mateship. And and there's been periods of our lives where we haven't been as infrequently in contact with each other as we would perhaps have liked. But coming back what you said before about making people feel like no time has passed, that's something that you've always done really, really well. Because every time we've ever reconnected was again, it just felt like we were hanging out yesterday. And there's always been a deep respect, mutual respect there, and we've done a lot of stuff together, been through a lot of things together. You were there at my wedding, and
lived together when we're down in Tassie. So
lived together, yeah, and I've come to love you like a brother. So that's why we've got this relationship that we do. We've never explained the connection. That's the connection. We've worked together, we've lived together, we've laughed together, we've cried together. Yeah. And that's what life's all about, And
that's just reaching out to your mates. Like I'm not guilty of, not catching up with a lot of relationships. And every year I set the goal, but it's kind of deliberate actions. So, even just throwing a text out to someone from your past that you love and respect, that you just saw your number in the phone, just throwing a text out, give them a call. Even you plan to call them and you don't because life gets busy, but don't forget about not calling them or texting them. There's a few people after this pod will probably throw a text to you out too and say, sorry about didn't call you last week. But, just trying to keep those connections going because a lot of people, there's a lot of talk about mental health and these sorts of things, and we'll touch on that in our podcast, but, it's very critical that we keep those relationships going. I think I watched a little video today about, longevity in life, and it's the connections and associations we have with later in life, that the people who live the longest, so it's not even, as critical as diet and exercise and all these types of things that we all want to be, fitter and stronger and look better and all that kind of stuff. But it's the relationships we have, I've seen it with, my dad, not having those relationships, and your mental health does suffer, because you're not being stimulated. it's it's nice to get a phone call from someone. But again, if we don't cultivate that as young people growing up, especially in the we're very lucky to be living in the day and age that we are with social media and connection and emails and phones, that we can just throw out a message. You never know what someone's going through. Yeah. And I've told my mates, my phone's on 24/7. It's you need something, you call me. If I hear that phone ringing, I'm answering it. And I've helped someone, and helped guys, to 2 in the morning phone call, or my dad calling up at 11 that could have ended badly. There's times where people need you. So if you've got that attitude and you're willing to do it, again, if you're willing to give for the sake of giving, life's pretty good. We're in the best country in the world. We've got, our friendship groups are fantastic. Family, they're not all perfect, but family's family. Yeah. You get what you get. You love them. You hate them one week, you love them the next. So it's just, that's life.
That is life.
Yeah. So it's having perspective on your problems.
Yeah. 100%. Well, mate, I love that you came on. I really appreciate you giving me some time.
To come on.
And it'll be one of many. I think there's an ongoing collaboration between the two of us in the podcast space, I think, that I can see in the future. So can't wait to make that happen. So again, Chad, thanks for your time.
No, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, mate. I appreciate it.
Beautiful. So people, thanks for listening in. We're going to wrap this up now. And don't forget to follow, subscribe, and it really helps too if you give us a rating. It just helps reach more people. So don't forget to share and tell your mates about the show if you think they might benefit from it. I'd really appreciate that. Keep in touch with what we're doing. We're going to make sure you're aware of Chad and Mark's podcast when it's ready to go, and you'll hear from Chad again. But in the meantime, be kind and have a great week, and I look forward to chatting on the next one.